Welcome to Case 17P, the Checkpoint Shadow. This is not a normal news summary. It is a Detective Riddle investigation built around one central challenge: how to separate confirmed evidence from assumptions, incomplete reporting, and misleading connections. The case concerns the May 23, 2026 shooting near a White House security checkpoint. The objective is not simply to name a suspect, but to identify which suspect chain is actually supported by the facts. As the evidence case opens on screen, the audience should treat every clue as part of a larger logic test. Some details will look connected but belong to different incidents. Others will sound convincing but remain unproven. The correct solution will require caution, not speed. This investigation has rules. The strongest answer is not the most dramatic one. It is the answer that survives the evidence filter. The audience must distinguish three categories: confirmed facts, charged or reported allegations, and unresolved claims. That distinction matters because political violence produces intense pressure to explain everything immediately. However, early explanations can become unreliable when separate incidents are merged into one story. The riddle will move through the scene, the timeline, the suspect profile, and the final suspect chain. Each stage provides useful clues, but also introduces a possible trap. The task is to avoid jumping from possible to proven. The audience should listen for what is known, what is not known, and what only appears to fit. The first clue is the scene itself. The incident occurred shortly after 6 p.m. Eastern Time, near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, close to a White House checkpoint. The reported sequence is narrow but important. A person approached the checkpoint, removed a weapon from a bag, began firing, and Secret Service officers returned fire. A bystander was struck, and no Secret Service personnel were reported injured. At this point, the central question appears: which claim is the weakest inference? The options are not equally difficult. Some are grounded in the basic reported sequence, while one goes beyond what the evidence can safely support. The audience should not choose the answer that feels most politically satisfying. It should choose the answer that has the weakest evidentiary foundation. The second clue introduces the larger pattern. This case sits within a string of recent violent incidents connected to the president's orbit. But this is where the riddle becomes more difficult. A pattern is not the same thing as a single case. The April 25th White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting involved a separate suspect, Cole Thomas Allen. The May 4th National Mall or Washington Monument shooting involved a different suspect, Michael Marks. The May 23rd White House checkpoint shooting is the latest incident and has its own suspect chain. The trap is obvious. When incidents happen close together, names, locations, and motives can be mixed into one confused narrative. The audience must therefore solve identity through exact matching: date, location, incident type, and reported suspect. The suspect dossier narrows the investigation. Public reporting identified the May 23rd checkpoint suspect as Nasir Best, age 21. The location clue remains essential. This was the White House checkpoint area near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. Prior White House contact history was also reported from 2025, but that does not automatically prove motive. This is the key discipline of the case. The audience may use prior contact as context, but not as conclusive proof of political intent. A reliable answer must combine reputable reporting, consistent location, consistent timing, and restraint about unresolved motive. An unreliable answer will rely on rumor, confuse separate incidents, or transform incomplete information into certainty. A careful investigator records not only what happened, but also what did not happen. In this case, no Secret Service officers were reported injured. The president and protected operations were not reported as impacted. A bystander injury is known, but early reporting did not definitively establish which gunfire caused that injury. These non-events are not minor details. They protect the investigation from overstatement. The question asks for the most responsible headline. Option A claims motive was solved within hours. Option C claims coordinated suspects. Option D claims officers were injured. Each of those goes beyond the evidence. The responsible framing is narrower. A checkpoint attack is under investigation. This is what a good inference looks like. It does not pretend that every question has already been answered. It says only what the evidence can support. The shooting triggered a security response and an investigation. A bystander was hit. The suspect died after officers returned fire. Motive and some causal details remained unresolved in early reporting. That restraint is not weakness. It is the core method of responsible investigation. In a high-pressure political violence case, the temptation is to close the story quickly. But this deck rewards the opposite behavior, keeping the conclusion proportional to the evidence. Now the trap is revealed. The weakest claim is that motive was fully established. That claim fails because identity and sequence can often be reported before motive is fully determined. Prior conduct may be relevant, and investigators may examine it, but relevance is not proof. Mental health reporting, prior checkpoint contact, social media claims, or political context may all produce theories. However, theories remain theories until investigators, court filings, or reliable evidence establish them more firmly. The correct investigative posture is therefore to classify motive as unresolved. In this riddle, uncertainty is not an empty space that should be filled with rumor. It is a boundary that a responsible narrator must respect. The consequences of the checkpoint shooting are broader than the physical scene. First, there is an immediate security consequence: lockdown or shelter procedures, perimeter scrutiny, and rapid federal-local response. Second, there is human harm: the bystander injury and the fatal outcome for the suspect. Third, there is institutional stress, because repeated gunfire incidents near presidential security zones intensify scrutiny of Secret Service protocols. Fourth, there is media pressure, because journalists present near the event became witnesses and were moved to safer interior spaces. Fifth, there is public trust risk. High-profile violence can produce fear, misinformation, and retaliatory rhetoric. Finally, there is the policy consequence. Debates about security hardening, threat assessment, mental health contact pathways, and firearm access will likely become more contested. This is the final riddle. The correct answer is not the most dramatic profile. It is the profile that matches every clue. The audience should test the full chain. The latest incident is not the April dinner case. The location is a White House checkpoint, not the Washington Monument. The suspect age was reported as 21. Prior White House contact history was reported. The motive remains under investigation. Now compare the options. Cole Thomas Allen belongs to the White House Correspondents' Dinner case. Michael Marks belongs to the National Mall or Washington Monument case. Nasir Best matches the White House checkpoint case. The anonymous coordinated group theory is not supported by the evidence threshold. The audience should now choose the suspect path. The supported answer is C, Nasir Best, the reported suspect in the May 23 White House checkpoint shooting. This solution works because it matches the clue chain: the latest incident, the checkpoint location near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, the reported age of 21, and the reported prior White House contact history. However, solving the suspect chain does not solve every investigative question. The final caution remains essential. The deck does not treat motive as settled. It also does not convert prior conduct into a proven political motive. That is why this is a detective riddle, not a rumor exercise. The case is solved only at the level the evidence permits. Theory false trail A shows how an apparently plausible answer can still fail. Cole Thomas Allen is connected to the April 25th White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting, not the May 23rd checkpoint shooting. This error happens when a viewer remembers a name from the same news cycle and assumes it belongs to the latest case. That is not evidence-based reasoning. It is proximity bias. The riddle principle is simple. Proximity in a news cycle is not identity evidence. A name being politically relevant or recently reported does not make it the right suspect for a different event. False trail B fails because the location is wrong. Michael Marks is connected to the May 4th National Mall or Washington Monument incident, not the May 23rd White House checkpoint shooting. This answer is more tempting than false trail A because it is closer in time and also involves Secret Service officers. But temporal proximity is not enough. The decisive clue is location. Washington Monument or National Mall is not the checkpoint area at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. In investigative reasoning, the correct date range cannot rescue a mismatched location. A case identity requires all major markers to align.
False Trail D is the most speculative option. It assumes a coordinated group theory without sufficient evidence. This is a common failure in politically charged cases. When motive is uncertain, people sometimes replace uncertainty with a more elaborate explanation. But complexity does not equal credibility. The absence of a settled motive does not authorize an unsupported coordination claim. Investigators may ask whether others were involved, and that is a legitimate question. But asking a question is not the same as proving an answer. The evidence threshold remains the same. Claims require support, especially when they accuse additional unnamed actors. The debrief separates the solved part of the riddle from the unresolved parts of the investigation. The supported suspect chain points to Nasir Best as the reported suspect in the May 23rd checkpoint shooting. But several questions should remain open unless later evidence answers them. Final motive and intent are unresolved. The existence of accomplices is not safely concluded. The exact source of the bystander injury may require further confirmation. The full clinical significance of reported prior behavior should not be casually interpreted. The long-term security policy response also remains uncertain. The responsible conclusion is therefore balanced. The known sequence supports one suspect chain, while motive and some causal details remain under investigation. The consequences include lockdown, injury, federal investigation, security scrutiny, and heightened informational risk.